Okay, so this video is going to demonstrate this first program right here. It says write an application where the user inputs three numbers and prints the average of the three numbers, all right? So this is going to be the first program where I really kind of teach you guys setter and getter methods and how to pass information into a method and get information back. Okay, so let's read this. Okay, write an application where the user inputs. So I'm going to call this one calc average because that's what we're going to do for this program. Okay, so I'm just going to call it main calc average. And where is this at? Main calc average. And I'm going to right click and say new Java class calc average. And this program will also demonstrate the scanner class. So to use the scanner class allows you to type information in. So I'm going to say import java.util.scanner. All right. So you put this right below the package, and this allows you to use the methods in the scanner class. Scanner is an uppercase S. Okay. So we come down here and we kind of do what we normally do. We'll say the class name is calc average, and I'll say my calc average equals new calc average. Now we have to create an object for our scanner to be able to use the method. So we'll say scanner my scanner equals new scanner system.in. So same thing, this created the myCalc object, this creates the myScanner object, and you can see it's the same kind of deal. Here's your scanner class, here's your object equals new, and then your scanner class. The only thing different is in here you have to do a system.in, okay? And I'll show you what this does here in a minute. So in order to do this, we need to ask the user to enter three numbers, okay? So we can say please enter number 1. And then we say my scanner equals, sorry, not my scanner. We would say, do I want to make these an int or a double? I'm going to say a double. Let's just call these a double. We'll say double number 1 equals my scanner dot next double. Okay. So this will be number 2. And this will be number 3. So let's test this real quick. So from last chapter, we say number 1 plus number 1. So you can see why I taught you how to concatenate your strings right here, because you want to be able to test that your information is being entered in how you want it to enter in, okay? All right, so if I run this, now it's going to be hard to see, but down here it says please enter number 1. So I'll enter 10. Okay, what that did is I typed in 10 and that gets stored in this number 1 variable. So if I enter, I don't know, 17 and press enter, and then 24 and press enter, 17 got input into number 2, and 24 got input into number 3, the number 3 variable. And then what I do is I print all these to make sure that that's what got entered. So number 1, 10, number 2, 17, and number 3, 24. So that's how I tested to make sure that my data is all properly entered, which it is. So now it's that, and I'm going to delete that. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to create a setter method. Now from here on out, we want to think about this stuff as setter and getter methods. Okay. Set methods are called mutator methods. Think of the word mutator, mutate, to change, like the X-Men. Okay, change form. Getter methods are accessor methods. They get information, okay? So when we're running these calculation type programs, we're going to set, and so we're not going to display like we used to. You shouldn't actually display. Typically, you don't display anything in methods, but that's the first thing we learn because it's the easiest way to learn. We're going to switch. We're going to set information in our setter methods and get information from our getter methods. So, what's the purpose of this program? It's to set an average. Okay? So, I'm going to say my calc average dot set average. Okay? And I have to pass in number 1, number 2, and number 3 into this thing. Okay? And like before, we've never created this, so it's going to have an error. So let's go over here and do this. So I'm going to say public void set average. And I will say, now, when you pass data into this method right here, you have to accept it here. So you'll say double number 1, double number 2, and double number 3. Okay? All right, so from here, main knows number 1, number 2, and number 3. And so what I'm kind of showing you here is something more advanced, but I just teach it here and just tell you guys to memorize it without really having to get into the nuts and bolts. But it has to do with this concept called encapsulation. Each file or each class should know its own variables. So these get passed in, number 1, number 2, and number 3 get passed in from main calc, right here. And so what I tell students to do is to create my number 1 equals number 1. My number 2 would equal number 2. And my number 3 would equal number 3. And now I use this information right here. So then I can say average, and I can run my calculation. I can say average is equal to my number 1. Yeah, I need to put some parentheses around that. Plus my number 2 plus my number 3, all divided by 3. I'm going to say 3.0. Okay? So that sets the average right here. Okay, we asked the user, they entered their variables in here. These variables, number 1, number 2, number 3, get passed off into your set average method. Right there, right there, and right there. They get accepted in, and we reassign them to my number 1, my number 2, and my number 3. Now, when I say pass, I mean, like, when I hear pass, I think of like a football being thrown, passing in for, but you know, with programming, you're actually passing the data between the two files back and forth, okay? So if I were to, and maybe it would be easiest if I do something like this. Okay. Sometimes it might, I can't guarantee this, but, and this might not work either. But, let's see here. Let me do this real quick. But really what's going on here, number 1 gets passed right here. So if I enter 10 right here, 10 gets stored into number 1, and number 1 gets passed into here. And the minute that it gets accepted, it assigns number 1 to what was passed in, which was 10. So this number 1 is now 10. Okay? So sometimes, you know, and what I'll do is when we're at school, I'll put a ruler and I'll line it up from here to here so you can see where that data is going. It's going from here up to there. Number 2 is going from here up to here. Okay? So, you know, that's kind of what that does. And I'll show you that in class, all right? So then we add our information divided by 3. Now we're going to create our next method, okay? This is where it's going to display back. So we would say system.out.println, and we will say the average of the 3 numbers is, and I'm going to say my calc average dot get average. Okay, this method doesn't exist yet, but what we want to do is we want to pass the average, this calculation, back into main right here so that it displays. So it's not like you can't display your information in here, but the class is really designed to calculate your numbers and run processing, and your main is really where things are supposed to be displayed. Main is the one where it collects the data and passes that data off into all the different methods, and then information is returned back, okay? This doesn't exist yet, so there's an error, and we'll get that back. So for your access, so this is a mutator method. So set is a good word because you're setting something, you're changing something, your mutator method. Your get is you're accessing it. You're getting it back into main. So public double get average. So we will return the average. So what did we do here that's different? So I told you from day one this word void did not matter. It does matter now. So the word void right here means nothing in this method is being returned. It's void. There's no void right here because we are returning average. Now, why did I use double instead of void? Because it's the data type that needs to be returned. Average, as you can see right here, just a second, I'm going to sneeze, sorry. Average has a data type of double. So in your accessor getter methods, instead of saying void, you'll say public and then the data type. In this case, double. And you're getting the average. So you're returning the average. So now we go back in here and that's done. Okay. So, we can test certain things to make sure that they work. And I should have possibly done this. I should have kept that last information. Print ln, and I can say my number 1 plus my number 1. And you can do this. But more it's just for testing purposes, okay? Just so that you guys see that the information got passed in and reset to my number 1, my number 2, and my number 3. Okay, so let's try this. So I'll say 1, 2, and 3. So my number 1 is 1, my number 2 is 2, my number 3 is 3. So that got passed in here. These got reassigned. I displayed them right there, down here, okay? Then I run my calculations, and then this method's done. The average is set. Then I call the average of 3 numbers is 2. And that's pretty easy. If you do 1 plus 2 plus 3, that's 6. 6 divided by, where is it at? 3 is 2, okay? So I know this works, and this is an easy program, so I don't need to test much more. But again, just a quick recap. Okay, you import your scanner. You create your scanner object. You ask the user to enter in your variables, okay, using my scanner. Now, if you wanted to use an int, you would say next int. There's also next boolean. It gets a little bit different when you do chars and strings, so we won't worry about that for now, okay? Once you have your information, you take your variables and pass it in here, okay? Now, one thing that's hard on students is that they don't know. A lot of students, especially students that are kind of algebra or pre-algebra, they don't know the difference between a dependent variable and an independent variable. Average is a dependent variable. You can't run this calculation until you have your 3 numbers. These are independent. This is dependent, okay? So setting up the equations can be hard for students that don't have a very strong math background, okay? But anyway, once you set your average, then all you need to do is just get it. And so you need to return it back. So average exists in this class, and so you can return it. So you get the average. Public double get average. You don't use void right here. You use the data type of whatever data you're returning. You can only return one variable in this method, in a accessor method. You can only return one variable, all right? So if we had different calculations in here, you would have to create different get functions, okay? So, all right, cool. That's this video. It's done.